Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're peeling back the layers of the global AI competition to look at what's really happening beneath all those flashy headlines. We constantly hear about this runaway race, an insurmountable lead, and a future entirely dominated by brute force computing. But you know, the actual data tells a completely different and frankly deeply fascinating story. Let's look at the hard facts.
Okay, let's dive into this. 2.7%. According to the newly released 2026 Stanford AI Index report, the performance gap between the top US AI model and the top Chinese AI model has shrunk to a negligible 2.7%. I mean, for all intents and purposes, the technological gap at the absolute frontier of artificial intelligence is effectively gone.
But this presents us with a massive structural mystery. On paper, this really shouldn't be happening. If the United States commands over 20 times the private funding and basically holds the keys to all the advanced chip-making infrastructure in the world, how on earth did China catch up so quickly? To put the sheer speed of this shift into perspective, let's jump back just a bit. In 2023, the score gap between the leading models from these two nations was over 300 points. Fast forward to March 2026, and that gap is just 39 points. We are looking at a near tie between Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.6 and China's DALL-E 2.0 preview. And remember, this isn't some theoretical prediction of what might happen in a decade. It's the current reality we are living in right now. So, to understand this paradox, we have to look at the money. In 2025, private AI investment in the U.S. absolutely dwarfed the rest of the world, hitting a staggering $285.9 billion. California alone accounted for over 75% of that. Meanwhile, China's private investment was literally 1/23 of the U.S. amount. If you're only looking at these numbers, well, it looks like a complete financial knockout.
Now, what's really interesting here is the hidden variable, $184 billion. Between 2000 and 2023, Chinese state-owned capital funds injected approximately $184 billion into AI companies. And because this is state money, it just doesn't show up in your standard private investment statistics. When you factor in this massive influx of capital, the true financial gap driving this race is significantly smaller than the reported numbers suggest.
But hey, money can't buy what you literally aren't allowed to import, right? The U.S. currently commands over 5,400 AI data centers. That's more than 10 times that of any other country. China, meanwhile, faces massive hardware bottlenecks due to export controls on advanced chip-making tools. In fact, their domestic extreme ultraviolet or EUV lithography prototype isn't even expected to produce working chips until 2030. And of course, underpinning this entire global ecosystem is a deep reliance on TSMC in Taiwan, which creates a critical single point of failure for the world's computing power. Given this massive infrastructure gap, China's progress is just mechanically perplexing.
So how are they doing it? The answer to this puzzle actually lies in human ingenuity, forced by severe constraint. Listen to this really revealing quote from Lin Junyang, the technical lead for Alibaba's Qwen model. He says, "We are relatively strapped for cash. Delivery alone likely consumes the majority of our computer infrastructure. This has spurred our researchers to be innovative." When you can't just rely on brute force computing power and endless budgets, you are forced to get incredibly creative.
And that creativity has a specific name: algorithm hardware co-design. This is an absolutely critical engineering workaround. Instead of just throwing more and more expensive chips at a problem, researchers optimize their software algorithms specifically to match the physical constraints of smaller, inexpensive, and less advanced hardware. Necessity basically birthed an approach that relies on extreme efficiency. And this brilliantly illustrates that concept in action. Take DeepSeek V4. It's a frontier-class model coming out of China, but crucially, it's designed from the ground up to run natively on domestic Huawei chips. It effectively bypasses U.S. hardware constraints altogether, proving that algorithm hardware co-design actually works in practice. It's a very tangible step toward a hardware-independent AI stack.
So what we're really looking at here are two entirely different strategies. The U.S. focuses heavily on software capabilities, releasing 50 major frontier models last year compared to China's 30, all while dominating private capital concentration. But China is playing a different game, quietly leading in physical deployment. They possess 4 times the AI patents of the U.S. and are deploying industrial robots at an incredible 7.3 times the U.S. rate. Essentially, the U.S. wins the computing and model race, but China is dominating the manufacturing and research race.
Section 1. The ground reality, lab benchmarks versus real-world messiness.
All right, stepping away from the international geopolitical race for a second, let's look at the ground reality. Because taking these brilliant AI models from a pristine laboratory benchmark and deploying them into actual businesses and physical homes is an incredibly messy process. We constantly hear this myth of AI everywhere, but the Stanford data shows that actual enterprise deployment of autonomous AI agents remains stubbornly in the single digits. Furthermore, those actively running these agents are seeing a 1/3 failure rate. Despite the incredible intelligence of the models we just discussed, over 2/3 of organizations have absolutely zero AI agents running in real business scenarios. The technology is capable for sure, but the integration is failing.
To understand why this is happening, just look at the robotics data. In a perfectly controlled, squeaky clean software simulation environment, AI robots achieve a staggering 89.4% success rate at complex tasks. When researchers watch these simulations, it builds this really powerful illusion of immediate, real-world capability. It looks like the future is already here.
But here comes the reality check. Take that exact same highly trained robot and drop it into a real-world physical home, with messy living rooms, unpredictable lighting, maybe a stray Lego on the floor, and that success rate completely plummets to 12.4%. Turns out, everyday clutter is the ultimate nemesis of a billion-dollar AI. The technology is incredibly powerful in the clean virtual worlds of software, but the physical world remains a massive, unpredictable hurdle that we just haven't cleared yet.
Section 2. The human impact. Who builds the future?
So, the crucial point is, as we transition from conversational generative AI to physical agentic AI, how is this shifting landscape impacting the humans who are actively building the technology? Well, look at this number right here, -20%. According to Stanford economists, since 2022, employment for software developers aged 22 to 25 has dropped by nearly 20%. It's a pretty sobering statistic that completely challenges the narrative that tech is this endless fountain of youth employment.
What we're actually seeing is a fundamental shift in job market demographics. AI isn't causing mass across-the-board layoffs yet. Instead, it's automating those junior entry-level coding tasks. The entry ramp into the tech industry is shrinking. However, employment for senior developers actually continues to grow, and demand for specialized AI scientists has surged by 119%. The industry doesn't necessarily want less talent, it wants a vastly different, highly specialized talent.
We have covered a ton of ground today. From a disappearing 2.7% performance gap built on hidden capital and brilliant hardware workarounds, to the stark difference between a clean digital simulation and a messy living room, to the rapidly shifting realities of the global developer job market. It is a complex, multi-layered race. So I'll leave you with this final thought. As the geopolitical gap closes and AI inevitably moves from the pristine lab into the total chaos of our living rooms, are we truly ready for a world where technology doesn't just calculate information, but actually physically acts upon it? Keep learning, keep questioning, and thanks so much for exploring with me today.